Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdicus Dave, and today I am joined by Felix Isaacs. And you have a successful Kickstarter going on right now, Wildsea RPG, and the art to it looks pretty cool. The game itself, from what I can see so far, I kind of glanced at the Kickstarter and looked at the trailer video, and I'm kind of digging it. But I definitely want to get you on here and have you tell me about it more and kind of explain it to me and dive a little deeper.
Yeah, well, this is one of the few things I know about in life, so I can try and answer any questions you have.
Okay, so let's I guess a quick elevator pitch of who you are and kind of what you do.
Yeah, okay. I'm Felix. I have been a professional game designer for a number of days I can count on my fingers. And I created the Wildsea, which is a kind of narrative-focused setting-based RPG where you play the part of wild sailors, cutting your way across the canopy of a treetop sea on chainsaw prow ships. It's a game about kind of exploration, both physical and cultural, and fighting really weird things, or making friends with really weird things, depending on what kind of group you're playing. So,
Did you say chainsaw prowl ships?
yes. Chainsaws are heavily involved, but only if you want them to. Like some people, they want to avoid the chainsawy aspect of things because they'd feel too much like the bad guys in Fern Gully. And I completely get that. So there are non-chainsaw options too. But like the sea does kind of regenerate at a rapid pace. So you can cut your way through the utmost branches. A couple of hours later, they'll be just fine again.
So you don't have to feel bad for. So there's like an alternate history steampunk kind of series that I was reading. Sir Burton and Swinburne, right? And like eugenics goes wrong in Ireland, and it totally gets overrun by like carnivorous vegetation. So so there's like instances like that where I could see like even if you're kind of a green person, at a certain point, chainsaws are okay.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I wanted to make a world in which, like, unlike ours, nature is not just ascendant. Nature has totally won. Like
Yeah.
you could cut down an entire huge kind of area of the wild sea, and a couple of hours later, it would just be back. Like you cannot win this fight. So people just kind of coexist with it. It's a kind of a solar punky type future, post-apocalyptic, I guess, but like a bright post-apocalypse. Life is generally better and brighter for most people. They just happen to now be incredibly reduced in terms of population and living on mountaintops as if they were islands.
So what was the inspiration for this world? Because this is way different and bizarre in a good way than anything that I've heard of before.
Do you want the real world inspiration or like the narrative inspiration?
You can give me whichever you want. We could go in either direction and circle back to the other.
Okay. Well, narratively, I love China Mavel and general kind of weird fiction type works. I think weird fiction is a space that isn't explored enough in fantasy.
Uh-huh.
And when I first heard about and listened to some actual plays of Blades in the Dark, I realized that you could do a really good setting-based kind of weird fiction-y world. So that was kind of a jumping off point for some things. Although the actual idea for the Wildsea existed as like a private project long before that, because I spent many years living in an office, working in an office where I could see the sea out of one set of windows and a huge kind of forested mountainside out of the other set of windows. And I guess over the years, those ideas just kind of combined in my head. Yeah, so that's I guess the origins of the Wildsea. I saw a lot of sea. I saw a lot of trees.
So you're not making a statement about the world, the world. What if the shoe is on the other foot within the real world?
I could lay claim to a nice grand statement, but it would just be a lie.
Yeah.
Essentially, I was just like, "Oh, sea of trees. Haven't seen that before. That's kind of cool."
So where do the people live in this world? And is it that there's just so much vegetation and it regenerates so fast, or is it the world actively hostile?
Um, okay, so there's a few answers to this. The most basic one is that people live wherever they can. When the verdancy happened, which was like the event behind the Wildsea, because the world in the kind of game's fiction, we keep history very, very light because that's not a part of settings I like diving into. But it's kind of established that the Wildsea has been around in its current form for about 300 years, and before that, it was a much more kind of standard world. Could have been Earth, could have been Trek Fantasy World number 12, could have been whatever you want. We leave all that stuff up to the players. But when the verdancy happened and the trees kind of appeared over the course of a couple of days, it destroyed most cities, drank the oceans, killed almost everybody that wasn't either in incredibly secure buildings that were tall enough to be above the new kind of sea level, or that weren't already on mountaintops. And that means that now the kind of largest numbers of people live on mountaintop islands or on what's called spits, which are fragments of the old world, like chunks of temple or bits of stonework, Leviathan bones, which have been like caught up in the tangle of branches. So some of them reaches above the canopy, and that's treated as buildable land. They don't last forever, but like, you know, building somewhere is better than building nowhere in general.
So do some people live on these ships?
Oh yeah, there's an entire origin called Rootless, which are people who have just said, land isn't for us, ships are the way to go.
And how does one sail across treetops?
So there's a few ways. The most common one is probably the chainsaw prow. There's a few different kinds. Not that I'll go into the huge specifics of things, but like there's various ways you can attach chainsaws to what is essentially a boat hull to make it work. The branches are thick enough to keep the hull up, and the chainsaws kind of cut and grab and bite and drag you forward. It's not elegant and it's very noisy, but it works. If you want to do it in a slightly more eco-friendly way, there's like grappling arrays where you can fire out grappling hooks and winch your ship forwards. There's mechanical limbs. There's grafting bits of giant insects onto your ship. So you could have like a kind of a boat hull with centipede legs dragging you through the treetops instead. There's a lot of ways to do things.
Sounds a little biopunkish too.
Oh yeah, I do like a good mingling of kind of nature and construction. I think
isn't it
things
punk?
I like about the system.
It's so great. You can just attach like any word in front of punk,
and
it just like conjures up a whole new setting.
Well, I wanted to call it eco-punk for a few days, and I realized that's already a thing. So yeah, but most people that play it, especially the kind of brighter versions of it, they seem to default to a kind of solar punk ideal, because it's very much you live alongside nature in a reasonably bright future. But it is still dangerous. Like the waves, it's not that the waves want to kill you, it's that the things that live in the waves want to kill you, and there's far more of them than there are people.
And what is it that lives in the waves?
Various kinds of hybrid plant and animal, leviathans, ancient gods who were broken out of their tombs by the arrival of the sea, new gods caused by kind of accretions of belief by these little fractured communities. There's a lot of stuff. So I think our iconic creature so far is the Pinwolf, which is essentially a wolf with thin pin-like limbs that allow it to kind of dig at its legs as it runs just about any surface. So it can move across branches and through boat hulls and over stone at any angle, still at speed. I like them. They're cute and dangerous.
So are any of these plant amalgamations sentient, intelligent?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of unexpected life to be found out on the waves. But I don't want to spoil too much because, hey, there's a whole book to read.
Yeah, there is a whole book to read. So what are the mechanics?
Okay, the actual mechanical side of things, it was a weird journey to get here, but we've ended up with something that draws dice-wise, mostly from Blades in the Dark and Belly of the Beast. So it's a kind of a D6 dice pool type of game. Mm-hmm. You construct a small dice pool, no more than 66. And when you roll, you're looking for the highest number as your result, and whether you have any doubles, which implies narrative twists, which people at the table can fill in. It's very much, although there is like a GM figure, wording and some elements of narrative are decentralized and given to the players to have input on. It's very much aiming to be like a low prep to no prep game.
Okay. And what was the kind of the inspiration for that style play?
I played a lot of Pathfinder and a lot of 3.5 and a lot of Call of Cthulhu when I was younger. And when I started designing the Wildsea, I was trying to marry those things together. That kind of the free narrative flow of something like Call of Cthulhu with the sheer combat-driven stuff and progression-driven stuff of things like D&D. And I couldn't really do it. There were some amazing failed attempts that I got to playtest, which was really fun. And then over the course of a few weeks, I discovered Kickstarter and Dialect and Blades in the Dark and 13th Age, and realized that those narrative elements I've been trying to push in had been done when I wasn't watching the actual gaming community, and I could kind of learn from their successes and failures. And one of the nicest things that I realized that some of the elements I'd taken from video games, Sun the Sea being one of the big ones, because I loved Sun the Sea and the way they into kind of wove narrative with their mechanics. Some of the stuff I'd taken from games like Sun the Sea had also been taken by the wider RPG community, which was really nice. So, yeah.
So it made that much easier to integrate.
Yeah, it was a whole new world, and it changed the mechanics over the course of a few weeks, and the game suddenly felt a lot more workable.
And so how long have you been working on this game?
That is a tough question. The earliest idea of like some of the base mechanics, about 12 years, but that's just from home brewing old things, like the tiny systems that ended up being incorporated over time. The actual idea of the setting, about 4 years, I think. And then the rules as they stand with that kind of narrative baseball system, about 2, roughly. Okay.
That's been in the making for a while now.
Yeah. We got our first bits of art, like concept art, about 4 years ago, and that's when I kind of tend to think of it as being a real thing at first.
Yeah. And I believe there's at least one actual play, right?
Yeah, I think there's a couple now working on some more in the background, which is fun. I've done a few streams. There's multiple games being run per day on the Discord now, which is really nice to hear, even if I can't listen to them all, sadly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's gotta be a cool thing to see other people enjoying this thing you've made.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Have you been surprised by some of the things that people maybe have done with your baby?
Oh yeah. Okay, so one of the things, so I'm getting really excited. One of the things I love about the Wildsea is that we specifically made it so it fills in as little detail in the world as possible. It gives you the really big stuff, the kind of pillars of truth that everything stands on. There's a sea of trees, chainsaws are involved, etc., etc. And then gives you some of the smaller stuff, like here's a particular bloodline, or there is a fruit called a slaughtermelon, etc. Like all the tiny flavor. But everything in the middle is open to interpretation. And I have seen some amazing interpretations of the Wildsea just from players. One of our people in the Discord made like a kind of hyper-militarized futuristic version, which was incredible. One of our regular people has gone full into the idea of like the spiritual world and the kind of ancient cults and gods side of things. And like they're all not ways I would have done it myself, but they're all entirely valid ways to play, and I love that.
What does the future one look like?
There's actually, I won't spoil it because there are some bits of short fiction that person wrote on the Discord, which we've pinned in our words channel. But it's definitely interesting.
I'm envisioning like now there's settlements and cities that have laser fences around them. So as it grows, it just cuts itself away.
It's not quite that futuristic, but I believe there was talk of space stations at one point. So who knows, really? Yeah. You just need a chainsaw wall.
Chainsaw dome.
Yeah. As long as it's not fire, then there's a lot of ways to keep things out, I suppose.
Yeah.
Fire is generally bad news.
Yeah, I can imagine. I thought you were going to be like, oh, these plants are immune to fire.
No, no. There's actually one of the things I've been working on in the background is something called reaches, which are different areas of the sea that may or may not exist when you play. So it's kind of like if you likes the ideas, you can incorporate them. If not, you can ignore them. And one of those reaches is the conflagration, which is an area of the sea towards the north, which has been on fire for a couple of hundred years. Because, of course, the fire's never going to run out of fuel. The trees keep growing. The fire keeps burning. It's a high oxygen environment. It's, yeah. And there's entire cultures dedicated to stopping this fire spreading south. It's not the nice place in the world, but it's a fun one to write about.
So is it a class-based system?
Sort of. Characters are kind of, if you think of it in terms of class, it's like combining three classes, essentially. You've got your bloodline, which is what you are. You've got your origin, which is where you came from, and your post, which is what you do to be useful. And you take a kind of roughly equal amount from each of those three things and combine them into a single character.
Okay.
So think of it as like combining three mini classes, I guess.
I mean, that sounds fairly, typical to a lot of games where it's like, you species or race, background, and then, kind of like your job, your career, your class.
Yeah,
So
the difference with this one to a lot of the games I've played is that it is a roughly equal spread.
Yeah.
It's not like your species gives you a few modifiers. Your species gives you just as much as your origin and your post does. So it is a kind of, your character is 3/3 combined into one.
And then how does advancement work?
That is something that we're still testing a little internally, but at the moment, it's based on a milestone system where the things you achieve, you can start altering your character based on kind of meditating or working on those things.
Okay. And does that stuff, do those choices, like, is it a pool everyone picks from, or is it like based on those three components that you put together earlier when you built your character?
Yeah, it's partly based on it. That's probably the easiest way to grow, is to delve deeper into the things you already are. There's also nothing stopping you, either mechanically or narratively, from spreading out in a different direction at all.
Okay, cool. So definitely it sounds different. I like the concept that you came up with. So what led you to the decision to make this like a standalone game versus, say, a campaign setting for an existing game?
A big part of it was just that I'd been out of gaming for a long time when I started running this. Throughout the years, early 20s, I guess, I played a lot of games. It was my main social thing to do. But then when I moved for work, I was in a foreign country. I didn't speak the language, at least not very well, and I never really got that much better at it. So suddenly and internet gaming back then was not anywhere near as big. Like we had a few sessions over Skype of various things, but like it just wasn't as easy as it is today. And so I just kind of dropped out of the RPG world. 4th edition for D&D was the last one I played. 5th edition came out and I barely saw it at all.
Yeah.
So when it came down to actually doing the rules for the setting, I was like, well, I could draw from something else, but I'd have to learn that thing first. It's not like I had a firm basis in any modern game. So,
okay. I was just curious. I mean, because there's quite a few like generic systems or whatever. There's anything wrong with making your own, and also sometimes like nothing quite does what you want it to do anyway.
Yeah, I like, now I've delved back into the gaming scene, I really like unique systems that are built around the genre or setting that is being used. I think those are my favorite systems at the moment.
Yeah, I definitely have friends that are like of that school of thought where they definitely, if they're playing an RPG, they want the setting to come with it, and for the two to kind of work together, opposed to playing, a generic RPG where you kind of have to, maybe customize or figure out how to make everything work together.
Yeah.
So
I remember I played a lot of, like I said, a lot of D&D. I also played some Spycraft and some So like other use the basic D20 system, but they never seemed to work as well as D&D, and I wanted to avoid that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, yeah. What?
Nothing against Spycraft, of course. I had some great fun playing Spycraft.
Well, sometimes the system doesn't matter that much, right? It's more about who you're playing the game with. I feel like you can have a good time with a subpar system and a fun group, but not so much the other way around. You know, if you're not vibing with the group and the people you're playing with, it doesn't matter how good the system is.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I have played some not great games with some great groups and still had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I've played some great games with some not great groups and had a pretty terrible time.
So I take it you're then back in the gaming scene now.
To an extent, I've backed a lot of Kickstarters and I've got a lot of PDFs. I travel too much to have much physical stuff.
Okay.
I haven't had much time to read them. Even games made by people I actually know in real life.
Yeah.
I still haven't had time to delve into them, and I feel like a bad friend. So,
well, it happens. Are you getting any gaming in nowadays?
Apart from the Wildsea, which I listen to and play in and run several times a week at least. The last thing I played that was new was Edge of the Empire, which I actually really enjoyed and wasn't expecting to do. But it's hard to keep a consistent campaign going. Because, well, one-shots are easy enough to always when people kind of quarantine or just lost or bored. But those consistent times are much, much harder over the internet, I find.
Well, I mean, you're still gaming. You're just playing your system more than anything. That's counts.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, if you count the thing I actually made, a lot.
So are you usually running that for people, or are you playing in games now that other people are running?
I started off running myself quite a bit. Then two absolutely wonderful friends, Rick and the game, so I could focus on the actual writing, and they have done an amazing job. I think they're definitely both better GMs than I am, and they do things with the system that I would not expect. Now we've got this whole new crop of new GMs taking to the Wildsea. So well, I'm getting to play in games with people that I've known for like a week or so, and it's great.
That's really great too for getting perspective, right? For the thing that you made. It's one thing for you to run it and see like because you know how it's supposed to work, and even things that maybe you haven't been able to put to paper yet, right? Per se, but seeing other people run it and then like that gives you like more understanding of how other people are perceiving the thing you made.
Oh yeah, I have definitely learned more in the past few weeks of public playtesting than I learned in the entirety of closed playtesting. Because seeing how other people run it, just when I'm listening in and I'm determinedly not jumping in to correct someone, seeing how people run it and interpret the rules and read them as written as well, it is eye-opening.
How many changes have you made due to that?
That's a difficult one. Not so many like the core mechanics yet, but there are a few things that when you hear them being played, I just listen to them and think like it works, but I think it could work better.
Yeah.
So there are definitely things in the works for small changes, but nothing. We're not going to change the dice system or anything like that. So
what kind of characters are you playing?
I try to. Okay, weird. There's a particular bloodline called the Ectus, who are kind of fibrous cactoid types, really tall, directly inspired by the Baslag series, because I just wanted some kind of cactus person to play as. Yeah. And the Ectus are by far the least popular bloodline to play, and that makes me really sad. So I often play either Ectus themselves or people with Ectus limbs grafted onto them. Just cactus representation. I'm all about cactus representation.
Oh, nice. Texan at heart. So some of the bloodlines aren't human then.
Yeah, we have 4 in, well, 5, I guess, because one was revealed a couple of weeks ago. 4 in the main playtest doc, which will swell to 5 with the new playtest coming out at the end of the Kickstarter, which are Ardent, who are the kind of weathered descendants of humanity, the Ectus, who are cactoid, human-ish individuals, filling up one of the kind of plant-type race roles. Then Gao, who are mushroom-based and very spry and springy and natural explorers. And then everybody's favorite so far, the Chelicrae, which are sentient hive minds of spiders in skins they make themselves from whatever is laying around. There has been an unexpected surge of people who just want to play Chelicrae. And I love
So let
it.
me get this straight, right? Like I read the description of that one and I really didn't fully understand. Like, so basically you're playing a bunch of spiders in a suit.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Okay.
And people seem to love it. We've had some really diverse Chelicrae characters. Everything from like people who are wearing the skins of the other bloodlines and trying to pass themselves off as a member of one of them, which is creepy in its own way, but fair enough. It's not like I didn't make the rules for it, so I can't really blame other people. We've had people who kind of wrap themselves in rags or bandages or kind of huge multiples of clothing. And then we've had weirder ones, like one Chelicrae, which was just an iron box, which moved around on tiny legs, which I'm pretty sure was a reference to the luggage from Discworld.
Yeah. So also people can grab the quick start, right?
Yes, it's available on the Discord and on the website. And I think from Mythopia's website too, Mythopia being our publisher.
Okay. Ooh. Oh, so you're already working with a publisher as well. You're not self-publishing?
Yeah, it's a very recent thing. It's can I tell the story? Because I love the story.
Yeah, tell away, man. We're here to talk.
Okay, so in the very first round of like public playtesting, I was grabbing people from various different design communities and saying, hey, I've got this game. I think it's okay, but I want to check it with people who know more about this stuff than I do. Played a few games, found some problems, and had some laughs, which was great. One of the people I played with was a guy called Ray, and Ray made a great character. I really enjoyed the game. They made some soup, had it stolen, and had like a street and rooftop chase to get soup back, which was not whatever I envisaged when I made the Wildsea, but it worked really well.
Yeah.
So I was happy with it. And then I kind of left it at that. And months later, I realized that Ray that I had played that game with was one of the co-founders of Mythopia, and normally a comics publisher. And the comics that they publish, some of which are actually behind me there, advertising plug, Glow, one of them, was one of the direct inspirations for the world of the Wildsea. It got me interested in conlanging and kind of semi-post-apocalyptic civilizations and old world ruins and things. So I just got back in touch with Ray and had a little fanboy moment saying, hey, this thing I made, it was inspired by you and I've played a game with you and I didn't know. Thank you so much.
Oh, nice.
And we just got talking from there. And now he's publishing me. I'm their first role-playing game. Well, not me personally, but the Wildsea.
Yeah.
First role-playing game. Yeah.
And, and this is also your first foray into professional design too, right?
Yeah, this is a new one for me.
Yeah, and the Kickstarter 83,000. So by the time it ends, it's probably going to hit 6 figures, based on accepted Kickstarter math, right? So
don't even say it.
Is that a little intimidating?
Oh, very much so. I'm lucky because one of the things that Ray is doing as the publisher is working out how to apportion money and where things are going. Because before we teamed up, we had a lot of art and assets already, but the page layouts not exactly professional. I did them myself. I had to learn how to do it, and I wouldn't say they're stellar. The art I'd paid for out of my own pocket, which was great when I was working a full-time job, but not so great once the world moved into its current state, obviously. So having someone working out the finances and where money needs to go, and that's been a real weight off my mind, which has been good, because the business side of things is not where I excel. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we're currently in the process of fulfilling our first Kickstarter. And, with the state of the world, with some other things that happen behind the scenes, we're running a little behind. We're a couple a couple months behind, and like we are partially delivering. We're still waiting for other pieces, components to deliver on. So yeah, having someone to kind of help you through those steps is definitely helpful for sure. It is a whole new world, and also making books is expensive, right? It's
I had no idea how expensive these things are going to be. Like we try and be like as transparent as possible when it comes to like what the money's for and where it's going, but we avoid actual totals because everyone needs a little bit of translucency rather than transparency every now and then. But like you
can't tell them about the portion that's for the yacht.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, if I was going to make a yacht, it would definitely have a chainsaw prow. It's not going to make someone in the real world. But no, like I was blown away by just how much money certain aspects of manufacturing took. For a while, I thought it was going to be digital only. Because we live in, to coin a phrase, very uncertain times.
We actually spent more on production than we did on manufacturing. I mean, there are actually other components that blew the manufacturing side way above, but that was like, so we did an encounter book, and that adds like maps and minis and like that kind of stuff is super expensive to add to it. But books, I mean, if you buy enough of them, they get very affordable fast.
So we just need to hope there's enough people to actually want them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like you need a lot of them in order to get that cost down.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's definitely been a learning experience, which now you get to go through.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we've tried to do is we've tried to be, like I said, transparent with where the money's going. And one of the things we've tried to do is, because, I mean, you've made things, you're in the kind of RPG sphere, you know this to be true. Getting into this game to make money is a terrible idea. Like, I'm not going to become a member of the uber rich elite. It's just not going to happen. I'm going to cover my costs, hopefully, and make a bit more on top of that, which lets me keep working on the game without worrying about finding a new job for the next year or so, which is going to be lovely.
Yeah, but, I mean, you can make a living, but you're never going to be wealthy, more than likely.
Exactly. Unless one of the things we've tried to do, one of the things we've tried to do is to kind of funnel as much money towards the artists and writers and the people that have made the game what it is, which I really like. I didn't think I'd have the chance to. And then everything past that, we've tried to eat into the costs for backers as well. Mm-hmm. We've already had one goal, which cuts some money off the shipping costs for physical books. And if we get to the 100,000 mark, we take another few dollars off shipping costs. It just makes life easier for everyone, I think.
Okay.
So, because a lot of the Kickstarters, I'm not going to name names, I try and avoid that again. But a lot of the Kickstarters I have backed and been the most frustrated with are ones where they swelled up well above their scope. They just, because they had money come in and they said, hey, we've got to make all this new stuff. And it's like, no, just make some new stuff that you think you can handle. Make the stuff you've already got the best it can be, and then try and reduce the costs along the line if you can, which is what we've tried to do ourselves.
Yeah, I guess it's weird too. Like, there's going to be different philosophies on that, because I mean, there's certain companies that like their business model is to put out 3-4 Kickstarters a year, and I just know like whatever product you're backing right now isn't the one you're paying for. Like that's already done. You're paying for what you're. It's how they figured out how to fund a company and keep a solvent company going is by doing Kickstarters. And it's like whatever they're working on next, that's probably what that money is going to go towards. Which I mean, I don't see it as anything nefarious or even bad for the industry. It just literally gives them the ability to hire people and have people working and making cool things. And actually, I'll say the company that does it because they've talked about it. I've seen it on streams. Is Monty Cook Games, and like it was Shannon Germain. She was doing an interview or something talking about that's how they're able to, by doing these Kickstarters every year, they're able to have a kind of like an old school gaming company that gets to keep employing people to make games, and people get to keep having their products. And
well, I mean, job security is really hard to come by. As I found out, so having that be a model, even if it might feel weird, it's probably pretty sensible.
Yeah, the world has changed, right? Things aren't the way they used to. You're not. You don't have gaming companies with bullpens the way they used to, right? Even even Wizards of the Coast and Paizo at some points scaled way back. I think they're growing again, but those are like the juggernauts in the industry. And if it's hard for them, and for anybody else, forget about it, right?
Yeah.
So do you know? So what's next after you finish this book?
Oh God, thinking more than about 2 weeks in the future is almost impossible for me right now. But that's not to say I don't have some tentative plans.
Well, once this is done and it's in everyone's hands and people are playing it, right, they're gonna want more. So the question is, I guess, will you do more, in this Wildsea world, or will you make another game?
I'd love to do more stuff for the Wildsea, but I also don't want to throw too much into the pot, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more I add, the more it decreases the creative space for world building and setting creation for players. And there's always going to be different types. Like, we have two very strong cores of players in the Discord. Some people do not want extra content in any way, shape, or form because they're happy with the information they have, and they can craft their own worlds around that. And I completely get that. And I'm one of them, really. But then there's also another kind of really solid and understandable viewpoint that are like, I don't have the time to make huge chunks of setting for myself. I want to see your ideas and the world you've made. And I get that too. So it's cutting a fine line between those two. Would I like to do more Wildsea content? Yes. Would I like to do other things with the same kind of core system? Also, yes. Would I like to make a cookbook? Yes. Don't know if I'll ever get to, but hey, it's a thing I'd like to do one day.
So at what point did you know you were going to turn this into a book?
That's a hard question. I think there was a point where I kind of, because I'm very vaguely active on social media. It's not my kind of realm in general, but I posted some early ideas to Reddit, and it can be pretty harsh in its feedback, and it was really useful as well. But I also got a lot of people messaging me privately saying like, hey, I don't like your rules, but I love your setting.
Yeah.
And the more I got that, the more the rules changed, but the more the settings stayed the same. And I guess when it started to feel a bit more real, so it was a slow. There wasn't like a specific moment where I was like, hey, this will be a public product. It was just that slow burn of like, I now have enough concept art and page layout and tests behind it that this could be a thing.
So how long was it in development where this is just a thing I like to play with my friends?
About 1.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then from there,
a year and 3 months, maybe. Yeah.
Then from there, you started kind of exposing it to the world, got positive feedback. I'm like, oh, this can be a thing. Because I find that like there's kind of like two different designers, right? There's the one that makes a particular game or thing, and then they stay there. That's all they do. That's all they're gonna ever do, and they're content to do that, and they will just keep building on that. Yeah. And then there's other designers where they're like, I made this thing. I wanted to do something specific with it. Now I'm done. I'm moving to the next thing. And like, they just like, like they're like mechanics, right? I see them being more like mechanics, and the other being more like, I wouldn't say use the word creators. They both create, but the creator like makes this thing, and it's going to be, it's everything, and they'll never probably leave it. And the other one is a mechanic, and they just like to take things apart, put them back together, and be like, oh, that's how it works. Here it is. You can all have it now. And they'll never look at it again, and they'll do it. They're going to just repeat that process and create new things.
Yeah, I don't know which of those I am, because in the past I've moved from small project to small project, but of course nothing's ever gotten this big, and nothing's ever been published. So I could happily move from small project to small project. There was no one invested, including me. Whereas now this one, it's stuck around for much longer and much bigger and gotten public. So when it's all done and signed and sealed and sent, I don't know if I'm going to be driven to go right back to it, or if I'll actually have that want to do something different.
Yeah.
I guess I'll find out when I get there.
True. So do you consider yourself a designer now? Like, do you want to do this professionally?
Oh, this is...
I mean, you're going to do it professionally no matter what, right? Because people just gave you a bunch of money.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to doing it professionally, but would it be my main source of income? I doubt it. Like, I've had, although it is a good time to be doing it for me, because it's not like I have much else going on. My main source of income for the past 8 years or so, I've been a traveling EFL teacher. So I've got to see places and teach students and have a great time, but I don't really like teaching online. Like, don't get me wrong, it's super valuable, and I have done it, but it's just, I prefer that kind of classroom experience. And right now, with the world the way it is, classroom experience and traveling from country to country doesn't sound so great.
What? So I don't know what that is, though. What is the EFL teacher?
You teach English as a foreign language. So I spent I spent 5 years in Japan. I've taught in England as well. It's with kind of foreign student groups coming to England for working holidays and things. And it's a really fun job, and I love it being my job. It's far less stressful than making a game. So
I can see that. It also seems rewarding because you quickly begin seeing the results of what you're doing. Or not seeing the results of what you're doing.
Or seeing the results, yes. Yeah. I'm not going to lie and say there's always results. Sometimes things go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like that kind of stuff is harder online, especially if you like the in-person experience. But now you have a fallback career.
Yeah, I'm ideal world. I would do both kind of 6 months a year, basically.
Yeah.
Like I would work on role-playing game stuff throughout autumn and winter when teach in somewhere nice for a while for 6 months through kind of spring and summer. But if that ever happens, I guess we'll see. I can't guarantee it.
Yeah. So some comments coming in from Doug. Teaching a language seems tangential to teaching a game. In some ways, I imagine.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of crossover.
Yeah, game language is completely new, especially if you get any new players. Have you had any new players that have never played tabletop RPGs before?
Yeah, actually, a lot of our early kind of Wildsea adopters had never played role-playing games or had only ever dabbled, because they came from the world-building side of things, because the setting was the strongest element. Mm-hmm. So they were drawn in by the art and the writing, and then they would like, oh yeah, and there's a game attached. I guess I should play it. So yeah.
What do you do with this other part?
Some players,
yeah,
some of our best players are players that haven't really played any other games or many other games at all, which is really nice.
So one of our chatters always asks about dragons and what's your favorite dragon, but I want to twist that a little bit. Does the Wildsea have any analogs to the dragon in it?
Yes. Not many things that breathe fire, because that would be devastating and horrifying. That doesn't mean they don't exist, just not many. We have art which has not been publicly released yet. I can only talk about it in vague terms.
Okay.
But Leviathans exist, and one of those Leviathans may include draconic elements and fantasy elements, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
Nice. So when when you're coming up with this concept, I think we talked about it before we actually went live. Where did most of your inspiration come from?
Oh yeah, in terms of like the weird fiction aspect,
yeah,
I just love seeing non-standard fantasy worlds, because I think it's fantasy is a place where you can explore such great ideas. And like this is not a kind of me being derisive towards the industry, I suppose. It's just one of those things. I just don't get drawn in by standard fantasy very much.
Okay.
I prefer logic, but also a good magic system, a good non-standard magic system can grab me too. So like recently, things like the Sanderson's Mistborn series, fantastic series. Love the way it was all handled. So there's definitely elements of like existing weird fantasy works or non-standard fantasy works.
Well, and so also like, I mean, it's a fantasy world, but the tech levels, a little bit is higher. It's not like, it's not like medieval fantasy at all.
No, there's definitely been at least one Gatling cannon on a ship. Maybe a kind of vaguely steampunky Gatling cannon, but hey, a Gatling cannon nonetheless.
Well, also chainsaws are rather modern.
Yes, yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, it's one of those things we just when I was deciding tech level, I very early on made the decision that I wanted machines to exist.
Yeah.
But I didn't want them all to be like the relics of a lost civilization, because I think that's having some as the relics of a lost civilization. That's great. That's cool. But I like the idea that the way people are, the way cultures are, the way humans, fantasy races would in general be, is to get those relics of lost civilizations and then reverse engineer them, because that's what people do. They build on the past.
Yeah. So what is like the tech level? What can people expect? Are you shooting things with guns? Are we using swords?
That is a really hard question to answer, and it's different for most tables. Two of the earliest games we played had radically different tech levels, and they both worked just fine. In the book, kind of accessible to everybody technology goes up to about the level of like chemical driven machinery. So like guns exist, but they rarely use explosives because, again, risk of fire, that's bad.
Yeah.
Compression engines exist. Things are like insect husks are mined for oil and venom, and there's elevators and things to get up to the tallest parts of the tallest trees. So like there is a level of technology, industrial style technology. But in one of the earliest games, they were that the crew were salvagers, and they were picking like diodes and kind of electrical equipment from an old weather research station, which implied that their history was a very high-tech past. And then in one of the other finding ancient magical cube, which was a kind of magitech-y type thing. Fine with either. I try not to develop it too much.
Okay, so it's kind of open to interpretation. Is there a magic system?
Yeah. There is a sort of magic system. Yeah, the sort of magic system.
So I'm trying to just wrap my head around what elements like make it fantasies as opposed to maybe like science fiction.
Yeah, a lot of it is like I wouldn't call this science fiction, because I am very, very bad at real world implications of things.
Yeah.
We have like I work very much on rule of cool. Would a ship with a chainsaw in its prow really be a treetop thing? Maybe not. Like, but it's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I try and avoid the kind of sci-fi trappings of things, because in sci-fi people expect things to make sense, and I am not the best at making sense all the time.
I feel like
fantasy is much flexible.
I feel like there's different like levels of science fiction as well, right? You have your hard science fiction where it's Star Trek and like everything's got to make sense, and they're going to make diagrams and blueprints of everything. You broke up a little bit there.
Oh yeah, and then you've got your kind of flying space wizard sci-fi too. Like, so if it was sci-fi, it would be more on the things, I guess.
Okay, more like science fantasy.
I guess.
Yeah, where I mean, like Star Wars is a great example of science fantasy where you basically do have your space wizards and the Jedi, and they still are using you're using lightsabers, so it's kind of like you have your swords and sorcery as well. So, how far along are you in the production? It sounds like the book is mostly, good part of it's done.
Oh, tough question. We've got the majority of the writing that we need done, but of course, Kickstarter has added on some extra bits, so that's lots to work on, which is nice. The core system works. I think it can be iterated on and improved, but like it is solid that people have been playing games without me jumping in to correct them, and things have been going well. Setting wise, things are set, although we do have some extra writers coming in to add some detail to bits of the world, which is really fun too. And a lot of what we're working on now is the more visual side of things, because we try to get as much across in the art as possible, kind of a picture's worth 1,000 words type of situation, especially in a setting heavy game. Because I could write 2 pages about a settlement, or I could just show you a picture, and that picture is going to be more interesting for most people to see.
What do you know what the page count's going to be?
We're kind of hedging around the 250-ish mark, it seems like.
Okay.
There's about 150 solid pages done now, and roughs of maybe 20 or 30 more. So we've got a little ways to go. But the hardest part, as I've been finding recently working on newer stuff, is getting the basic templating down for a new kind of section.
Yeah.
So that templating is slow, but once that, I enjoy the writing process.
No, I can totally get that.
So that's nice to know.
I noticed the layout for the book is a little bit different too. Like you're not going with a vertical book; it's on the horizontal. It's wider than it is tall.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, not by much. We haven't gone completely crazy. It's one of those things that a lot of people have asked about. People have said like, "Hey, I'm not going to back it because it's landscape," and I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." Like, I completely get that. Having a thing which is produced, like, it's not non-standard just for the sake of being non-standard. It's non-standard because every bit of work on it I've done over the years has been while traveling. I have been reading and running games off of a tablet or a laptop screen most of the time. Having single landscape orientation pages with chunks of information was just, when it got to manufacturing, we realized that we could orient it portrait, but that would be a lot of draws, a lot of rewrites, and look as good as we were going through it.
Okay, so is this particular look you're going for, and that just kind of fits it?
Because we do have so much art, and it's such a setting-based thing.
Yeah.
Going for that like coffee table-y type of is quite nice as well.
Yeah. No, that's what I was wondering. And as you were talking about the art and how much you're investing in there, that's kind of like where my mind was going with it.
Yeah. I also had a really important conversation with our landscape artist, Pierre, who is wonderful and has done so many weird things for us over the years, where he said, like, this is landscape, the orientation. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, are you thinking of changing it? I mean, maybe it depends on how it works. He goes, don't change it. This is a sea. It's so much harder to do portrait style waves. So it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Oh, okay.
So he's happy it's landscape because he gets more of a page spread to do ships and things on, which makes his life easier. I'm not going to say that's the main reason, but it's a contributing factor.
Yeah. No, that does make sense. Like it is easier to draw, wide than it is tall, and fits better and nicer. And also it's interesting, like, designing it for tablet use, with the idea of just being able to flip your tablet or phone or whatever, and read it that way. It's almost
while
like,
I've been so I was going to say, while I've been kind of abroad, I haven't had the chance to pick up physical books for anything in a really long time.
yeah,
And one of the things I found while working purely in PDFs for things is that a double page spread is always, the text is always slightly too small, and a single portrait page always involves kind of scrolling up and down.
yeah.
So yeah, I just defaulted to something where I could see the entirety of a single page on the screen and just be fine with it.
I kind of love that idea, like how you came to, like, yeah, this is why we're doing, the landscape view, because that's how I've been reading for the last X amount of years or whatever, and it just makes sense to me. So it's almost like a modernization of the book, right? Letting the tech kind of inform how the physical thing is going to look.
The last time I got a physical RPG book was about 7 years ago.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I have a brother that, like, if companies don't sell things digitally, he doesn't really want it. Because for the same reason, he's like, well, every time I move, I got to carry this stack of books. I would rather just have it all on PDFs and just have it electronically. So that does.
Yeah,
does
I've been living
sense.
out of a suitcase for a long time now. So yeah, books are weighty.
So, because apparently people in England already know how to speak English.
Well, theoretically.
Yeah. Oh well, larger proportions anyway.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
Very, very, very cool. That was one of the things that kind of stuck out me when I was like thumbing through the Kickstarter page. I was like, that book is wrong. But that being said, depending on the layout, how it looks, I'm kind of interested in seeing that book now.
Yeah, well, I think as well that the more recent indie scene, we've seen a lot of different sizes of books and things come out as well.
Yeah.
Which mostly hasn't affected me because, hey, PDFs. But like, it has been interesting seeing different well-funded projects come out over the past few years with either the kind of old paperback style of small stuff. I think Blades was like that, wasn't it? Just a kind of small.
I've seen a couple where Kids on Bikes was like that. There's been a few.
And there was a nice kind of square or squarish ones too. I've really enjoyed the look of.
Yeah.
Maybe one day I'll own some in real physical form.
Well, if this game design thing really takes off beyond where you originally envisioned it, I feel like you have like a really unique world where you could go into other areas with it. Like that might make it an interesting graphic novel or comic or or a novelization.
That kind of thing. Yeah. That'd be really fun to explore. I'm much more of a writer than I am a designer. Getting back into design has been kind of a hard process over the past years, but an enjoyable one too. Whereas writing and the creative side has been kind of ongoing.
Yeah, RPGs are an interesting beast that way, where you have to have so many skill sets. You can't just be a good writer or just be a good game designer. Mechanically, you have to be able to marry the two things together.
Enough to surround myself with. I've been lucky enough to surround myself with talented people to do the things I can't do, which is most things.
So, do you have any interest or thoughts about an open license?
Yeah, we're doing an SRD for the basic system for people that want to kind of tool around in the same narrative-influenced world. Because although there aren't like huge dramatic departures from a lot of other games that exist at the moment, that means theoretically it's easy enough to pick up. And the things that we do that are new are reasonably simple to explain, but the scope is pretty wide.
Mm-hmm.
it's mostly about putting narrative and world building agency in the hands of players, hopefully without breaking character too much, because that's one of the things that I was focused on from the outset. So we're doing the SRD for that. As for licensing the actual setting and world and stuff, I'm not sure about that yet. We'll see how protective I am of my first project.
Yeah. Well, we're up on the hour. Any final thoughts before we head on out?
No, other than if you like what you hear, head to the Kickstarter. I'm not saying you should back it. I mean, I am saying you should back it. I think it's great. But even if you don't back it, the free Quick Start PDF that we have linked on the Kickstarter page and the website, that is enough to play a one-shot. It's enough to play a small campaign. Flow of money is not great for a lot of people right now. So if you like the idea, but you can't fund the Kickstarter, that doesn't mean you shouldn't play. Like, we've tried to give as much away for free as possible.
Well, very cool. And thanks for coming on and hanging out with me today. Really appreciate it. And for everyone else, until next time, stay nerdy.